Greetings, my fellow creatures. I'm back with yet another episode of the BLU Review, and after a number of weeks, I'm back to the Extreme and Forgotten series. As you probably noticed, not every chapter in this series is equally extreme. I said before that they were all extreme in some way, some taboo or such. Or, very underground or very obscure. That's an extremity. But Forgotten, certainly. I thought about changing the name of the series to Extremely Forgotten. But, So, this one today is very extreme. And it's very forgotten by the parameters I set out for this series, which were a film that has not yet received a proper Region A, Region 1, whatever, Region A, Region A release. Has sorry, I have some notifications. Yes, and no proper Region A, North American release that's easily accessible, and there is a region free version of this particular item I'm about to review. It is a little pricey, and there is some debate over if it is region free or not. So I'm hoping a boutique label will pick this up. It was released in 2002 or 3, I believe, on a boutique label that we all know and love. Well, I'm sure of those of us who are familiar with it, called Anchor Bay Entertainment. Now, this has gone long out of print. I have resisted selling it because it's frankly one of my favorite films. I know I say that about a lot of movies. I have a lot of favorites. I have like a list on Letterboxd of 600 movies I love, and then the top 200 are like my favorite. But this is high, very high, occupies a high rung on the ladder, in the top 25, if not 20, and has been there for a number of years. I consider it, of the films I have seen of his, which are several, I consider it this director's masterpiece. It is his most, I think, well-known film. I think it is his most commercially successful film, for whatever reason, and his most notorious film. I'm not saying it's his most extreme or strangest film, or maybe it's not even his most ambitious film, but it boils all of those things he's known for, which are extremity and ambition and extreme craftsmanship, very high level of filmmaking that very few can ever attain. I think this is a guy whose canon needs to be all out on Region A Blu-rays. We can all just buy it at Walmart or Target, or at least through Diabolic. I just want them to occupy the same place a lot of great cult films now are. We finally have Jodorowsky's films on Blu-ray, Region A, or Region Free also. This guy needs his time in the sun. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about this film. This is The Cook, the Thief, His Wife, and Her Lover, starring Helen Mirren. The quote here says, "Excellent, exciting, extraordinary." Time magazine. They're pretty clever. Roger Ebert gave it 4 stars. Only 4 out of 5. This out of print DVD has some trailers, 2 different trailers, and that's it. It's a Region 1 DVD. What's more to say about that? Nothing. So I don't know how tricked out this allegedly Region Free one that I saw on Amazon is. I think it does have some extra video essays and things. This one was bare bones, but at the time, Anchor Bay was trying to put out as many cult favorites as possible and as quickly as possible, but also restored and looking as beautiful as possible. And that's where they kind of built their reputation. They put out some Bava films, they put out some Romero films, they put out things like Candy, um, all kinds of odd, obscure ones, like I'll never forget what's his name. They put out Dead Ringers, Cassavetes, Minnie and Moskowitz, um, Walking the Edge, which recently came out on Blu-ray with Robert Forster. Uh, Anything that William Lustig and Jay Douglas and company felt was an essential cult film. Like uh, William Lustig originally was not a big fan of Jess Franco, but he put out Succubus very early in the run, and this was one too. It's like, how can you not put out Heathers? That's another one I forgot. How can you not do this one? Really, must see. So I rented this in 1992. No, I rented this in 1993. I rented it at Cockbuster Video. Sorry, Blockbuster Video. I can't stop calling them Cockbuster, really, because that's what I've been calling them for 35 years. Cockbuster had a copy that was very cut. This is a 2 hour and 5 minute film, and the one I saw was about an hour and 35 minutes. So that's 30 minutes cut. The thing is, I knew this, but I still loved it, believe it or not. Shortly after that, though, I ordered the uncut videotape from Borders. I can't remember what label it was on. I watched the hell out of that thing. And I watched it widescreen. The first time I watched it was one afternoon. One afternoon in February, February of 1994, or perhaps January, perhaps late January 1994. I'm trying to remember because that evening I had dinner with some friends and we all went to see Nick Turner's Hawkwind, which his version had, of course, Nick Turner, founder of Hawkwind, and also Hawkwind ex-member Del Detmar. Helios Creed from Chrome was on guitar, and this band called Pressurehead were the backing band rhythm section. And it was billed as Nick Turner's Hawkwind featuring Helios Creed, the Space Ritual tour, and later he had to change the name of his project to Space Ritual. But it was as legit as any Dave Brock Hawkwind project. It just reflected an earlier period of the band. Anyway, that was the greatest live show I've ever been to, by far. Everyone I knew of import, except a couple of people who opted out, were there, and I mean, not in my life, and around town. Yeah, the Coven show at Necronomicon would be my second favorite. Anyway, so that early that afternoon, before we went to eat at this an Asian restaurant, we decided to test out the tape, see how it was going. I started watching it from the beginning, and gradually, my then girlfriend Anne joined me, an old friend Shannon, and this other young lady. Our final guest popped up. Of course, she considered herself kind of a cinematic. I don't want to say a cinematic savant, but she knew how to name drop. Let's put it that way. So this was a nice feather in her cap to be able to see the uncut movie that she really didn't know much about or care much about. Upon that viewing, I was a bit stunned. I couldn't really take it all in because my day and evening were already planned. So within the next couple of days, I watched it again, and it wasn't just that scenes were missing or little portions. There were little snippets out of almost every scene throughout the entire movie. To where I looked back on the rated version and was like, how is this even comprehensible? How was this comprehensible to me? But Greenaway's vision was so powerful that it did move me. But the uncut moved me even more. They cut the last part of the last few scenes so oddly that they had to rescore, not rescore, but reposition the score going from the final scenes into the end credits. I didn't know this, of course. The way it's properly scored, it's one of the most powerful, to me, juxtapositions of music and image and emotional heft that I've ever seen. So we'll go through this. This stars Michael Gambon, who later became famous for playing somebody in Harry Potter. I can't remember the name. Dumbledore, maybe. I think he replaced Richard Harris, who passed away. And Helen Mirren, who had already quite a few notable credits to her name by that time. She had been Morgan Le Fay in Excalibur. I alluded to her in my immediately previous Blue Review episode on Doctor Strange, 1978. And she's probably the best Morgan Le Fay, in my opinion. Helen Mirren. She'd been in some early films where she was kind of a very much like a sex symbol, British sex symbol, very just coquettish and bright-eyed and very nice body, very distinctive features. She was in one called Age of Consent. I think it was a later Michael Powell film, which I finally saw and was, it didn't do a lot for me. I thought it was going to be a little more scandalous for its time. It's like 1970 maybe. But she was in Caligula before this also. She played Caligula's wife, so she was no stranger to extreme cinema. Caligula being the film produced by Bob Guccione of Penthouse and also directed by Tito Brass. I have mixed feelings about that film, and I think the film itself is a very mixed bag. But that's something for another time. The fact that she was prominent as a British serious actress and also as a sex symbol and also as someone who was sliding into the world of extreme film and pushing the boundaries, and she had no compunctions about being completely naked and in all kinds of sex scenes. And she went on interview and pretty much said, I'm cool with this. I have no problem with my body. I have no problem with this. If it serves the material, take it off. No, she didn't say that, but that's what she did. And this is definitely a great example of that. So it's a very stark and frankly depressing story, but delivered with such cinematic bombast. It pops, everything about it. The title refers to the cook, is played by Richard Bohringer, I believe was in a French cult movie of the 80s that I have a copy of. I want to say it was either Subway or Diva or both. Help me out here, okay? I enjoyed him in that. So he speaks English in this, but he has a very, very strong, hard, heavy French accent. Sometimes it's hard to understand him. This DVD does not have subtitles, which if there's a Blu-ray, they better have subtitles. William Lustig was against subtitles. He told me this himself on the phone, and he said it in an interview. And sometimes you just have to let somebody embarrass themselves. Like, really. I don't watch any films without subtitles anymore because I'm a stickler for plot details, dialogue, nuances of words, pronunciations, and spellings of words as they're pronunciated. I can spell a character's name right, for instance, in a review if I need to. And I'm also slightly hard of hearing in this ear. So they're great. So this, I viewed it in preparation for this video. I'm still playing it. I'm playing it again. I like to do that, get into the immersion technique we learned in journalism. I didn't go to journalism school. That was in my autodidactic class. I graduated straight A's in autodidacticism. So the cook is Richard Boringer. He owns this extremely upscale, just fancy, amazing restaurant in Great Britain, and it's a French restaurant. But I'm sure he has delicacies from all over the world, but everything's presented as in a French, uh, uh, on a French menu, French style, French names to the foods. I believe if I'm reading the originals, the early scenes correctly, La Hollandaise was the original name of the restaurant, but this gangster named Albert Spica, played by Michael Gambon, he buys the restaurant and becomes Spica and Boers. Boers is the last name. Richard Boringer's character's name, Richard Boers. So, okay, and so then the cook, the thief, is Michael Gambon. He's a gangster. He owns these rowdies, these Cockney degenerates, reprobates, and they pretty much are protection racketeers, and they basically terrorize places like this. And in this case, he bought the restaurant with his ill-gotten gains, and he said, I provide protection, Richard. And, he's like, protection from what? And on down the road, he does mention, other people, and of course he says the health inspector, but he also says protection from the not so tender mercies of my men. Slight paraphrase. Albert fancies himself quite the intellectual. I have read that this film is like a commentary on extremely vulgar British people who believe they're classy. I don't know if that's true or not. I have mixed feelings about that whole socio-cultural thing, but this is a work of art, and so it's expressing what Greenaway wants to express, and that I totally understand being a writer. So, the cook, the thief, his wife, Georgina Spica, played by the aforementioned Helen Mirren. She is long suffering, and as the film goes on, her suffering, to a sensitive person like me, who responds on a sometimes emotional, visceral level to art of all media, her abuse and her degradation takes on this hellish cast. It becomes more and more difficult to watch, truly, literally wince-inducing. And I mean, I can handle it now, but I haven't watched this movie at all, I'd say, in 2 years. It had a powerful effect on me, and I was not going to watch the whole movie all the way through to prepare for this, but I couldn't stop. I had to go all the way to the end because there's a major payoff artistically and within the story, karmically, you could say. So, and her lover is Alan Howard, plays this character named known only as Michael. Michael is a very, well-mannered young 40-year-old British man who loves this restaurant. He likes to eat, and while he eats, he reads all kinds of books, fiction, nonfiction, on all kinds of topics. He may also be an autodidact, and he's a classy character. And much of what is communicated about Albert in the beginning and his partnership with Richard and the restaurant and Albert's criminal doings is conveyed, through a lot of dialogue. Albert is a loud, loquacious. He can't stop talking, screaming, yelling, spewing, profanities. He's really he's a monster. He's truly one of the most monstrous characters I believe has ever been created for the cinema. And Gambon is, to use some slang I use a lot, Gambon is completely off the chain. in this. And it's ironic that I say that because everything in Greenaway's films is perfectly measured, perfectly designed. He designs his own films. Uh, and this film is so deep in visual detail and texture. He does this standard thing where he does in several other movies, which I find very dramatic if well done in any film. Is where he does the left to right pan, the slow left to right pan across a 235/1 widescreen, and scored to that rhythm is Michael Nyman's score, which is he's very known for minimalism and serial. I forgot that term in music theory. Sorry, but he chooses very evocative and emotional chords, very grand, without being pompous. And this, to me, so some of his scores sound similar to each other in their construction. You can even hear some of this same style and score he did with Damon Albarn for Ravenous, um, which was quite good too. To me, this is his best work. He combines this rhythm, this building pulse all through the film until it hits this crescendo that's truly satisfying. We'll get to that, but so yeah, that's The Cook, the Thief, His Wife, and Her Lover, the characters, the actors. I was not familiar with Alan Howard as an actor. I apologize. I would like to research him. You think after all this time I would? Maybe I'm not as great an autodidact as I should be. The basic concept, you get across early, like in the beginning. Albert beats up this guy named Roy. He's supposedly owes him some money. He humiliates him, and basically they strip him naked and smear dog feces all over his body, and then urinate on him. And Albert's just on a big power trip. He's loving this. He just talks shit endlessly. Albert cannot fucking shut up. He's crude, unbelievably crude and arrogant, and he's pretty vile. So we'll see how more. I mean, I'm kind of understating it, really. This is a movie that you kind of need to see this performance and these activities this character engages in to just see. I mean, this kind of gangster makes all of the Scorsese gangsters look like total pussies. I mean, Guy Ritchie's gangsters make them look like fucking, romper room kids with plastic guns. They're not even the same level of menace, of power, I don't want to say power, because when I say power in relation to gangsters, I think of characters such as Vito Corleone, or even Frank White in King of New York. I'd say more than power, it's the ability to evoke fear. And that's a common thing that builds in this movie with the visuals and the music, the pacing, is this feeling of dread. I may have said before on other horror reviews that I'm not totally jaded yet with horror and gore and extreme things. Thank goodness. If a horror film, through its extreme imagery and storyline, mise-en-scène, whatever, if it evokes in me a feeling of dread going forward, and that continues, I get excited by that. It's like a rush. That's kind of one of the primary things I get out of horror. Not a lot of horror films make me feel that way. This film made me feel that way the very first time. It kind of makes me feel that way each time, even though I know what will happen. The action of it happening, the depiction of it is so powerful, especially after not seeing it, that it's just the same as the first time, really. You fear for the characters from Albert's immense wrath. Cannibal Holocaust also filled me with dread the first time, and sometimes still does. Sometimes you know what's going to happen, and you're still like, here it comes. I can't think of any others right at the moment, but I know there's a few, and they always are ones that linger with me and continue to affect me upon multiple viewings. This is one of the top ones. Basically, he's got this whole tableau laid out with, all these paintings and all the fancy dressed people in the restaurant. Greenaway is very attuned to color psychology, which I actually took in art in college. I had to do a color wheel, and I had to paint with gesso, which is frustrating because gesso dries a few grades lighter than the color you're looking for. So you have to like anticipate the gesso and paint. You got to be a step ahead of that gesso. But this one is a very red and black, or his primary colors in this. The gangsters mostly wear black leather. And some of them look tough, some of them look fashionable, some of them look like dandy, some of them look fucking ridiculous. And they tend to have these scarves or these like little things like here. I don't know what you would call this in fashion, like a red, I don't know, a red piece of cloth or something on one shoulder. I remember I dressed that way when I was kind of going into my new wave dandy punk phase. I would take a sash or a muffler that was dark blue or red or purple, and just put it around one arm on my black jacket. I just thought it looked cool. These guys all dress like that. It's like they're thugs. They're menacing. They've got the leather and the black. They're kind of like, street. I'm gonna say punks, like punk rockers, being like street punks. Rockers, teddy boys, but they're all really like gangsters. They're like grown men who are playing at being gangsters, but they really do the hardcore shit. Fear is their main weapon, but they'll fuck you up in a heartbeat. And Albert will utterly destroy you. And not only is he destroying you physically, he's also humiliating you and completely wrecking you verbally with verbal assaults and abuse. I think I've touched on a lot of the formal aspects of the film, which are really staggering. Let me go into the main plot wrinkle here, upon which this hinges. Is that quiet bookworm Michael catches the eye of the long-suffering Georgina. We get several examples of Albert's embarrassing of her in public in this restaurant. He holds sway over this restaurant like this fucking overstuffed tyrant. Michael catches her eye, and what's nice about this is Michael is built like an average guy, at least an average guy 30 years ago. And his hair's getting a little thin back here, kind of like mine is. And his is short, but I mean, not really short. And he's very well mannered. He's a very purposeful character. The way he moves is very quiet and lithe and purposeful. And I like that. All the characters have different kinds of visual signatures to them, and their clothing, the way they talk, the way they move. Some of this is really subtle. I mean, you don't really care about it or notice some of the minor characters, but you definitely see it on the four primaries, and that's where Michael falls on that spectrum. So they kind of meet at the loo, as they say, the bathroom. And Michael acts like, whoops, I went into the wrong place. And he's very gracious. There's no words exchanged between them. He hangs out in the hallway. She comes out, and right as there's an instance where he looks up where they could like meet eyes or say hi, she's, checking her makeup. Eventually, she and he gather the wherewithal to go into the main stall where they met before, and this time really do some meeting, and they begin making out. He's sucking her breast, and Then she's, they hear people coming, so he has to get up on the toilet to hide, so they won't see his feet underneath the stall. Now, while he's up there, she begins filleting him and then madly, passionately kissing him. And her lovemaking is very passionate, but it's very gentle. And to me, this goes along with the idea that a lot of people who are abused and sexually abused, the stereotype when I was growing up was always that then they could not perform sex, they were frigid, you know, then bad stereotype for macho guys. Now they turn lesbian, and that some may, or that they were just raging sluts and sleazy and gross. But I've learned in my personal experience with female lovers and friends, and reading about real people and encountering characters, of course, in works of fiction, that sex is still pleasurable biologically to a person, even if they have been raped. It's just they have to find what's psychologically comfortable for them, what mode to where they can just enjoy that at that level and not be fucked up by those things. So for a lot of people, it's a matter of healing, and and eventually they're able to make love. And we've seen that kind of process in many news and documentaries and situational things and medical things and health things and on TV and in movies. Some people, the abuse translates into an enjoyment for physical pain. Their brain reroutes it to that level, to where they do like having sex with a non-abusive partner, but they still want to feel that physical pain and that aggression. I've had a girlfriend or two like that, and that's been hard to do because I don't really want to hurt someone. But they want to go into a safe place to do it, and that's where you get into the kind of the world of BDSM and these kind of lifestyles where that kind of sex becomes a major thrill, and it becomes, for men, they're thinking it's incredible. I got power over the submissive woman, but really, the woman is getting enormous pleasure and power from safely feeling powerless. I don't see Georgina as the latter type of character, but I do see that she's been holding back sex, love, sensuality in a normal, healthy way. And this normal, healthy, sensitive guy, they immediately have that chemistry. So, is that enough to build a relationship on? Well, that kind of issue is touched on toward the end of the movie. It's interesting. Where she says their love was brief, but oh, so very sweet. And I can relate to that too. Spica just keeps making a fool of himself, and at one point, he doesn't notice the liaisons, and they get more and more in depth. I mean, and Richard steals them away through the back of the kitchen and the corridors, and basically finds them all these little nooks and crannies and closets and storage areas where they can completely be naked and fuck with wild abandon, and it's pretty erotic. Their scenes are very erotic, and like I said, there's nothing left to the imagination. You'll see everything Helen Mirren was gifted with, and you'll also see everything Alan Howard was gifted with. So if that's your thing, cool. But that tension and dread continues to mount. Like, when is Albert going to discover them? And meanwhile, his abuse of Georgina becomes more open, public, and foul in this milieu. Grotesque, horrible. He rapes her and makes this little boy who sings in the restaurant. He also works in the restaurant, but he sings. He's a shock of punk rock blonde hair. I don't know how old he's supposed to be. He looks about 10. and he's singing really high, you know, and Greenaway has a similar kind of character in Prospera's books. And you know, Georgina's quite fond of this kid. At one point, Albert is he's going to corrupt the kid because he's like, Georgie corrupted me. And you're like, right. And he forces the kid into the car and rapes Georgina. This is from a long shot, a long static shot. So only the actors are moving in the car. The kid escapes. She's not so lucky. She's beaten and bruised the next day. She's still lovely and has these gorgeous outfits. By the way, the outfits are all designed by Gautier. And one other thing I want to say about the outfits, especially in relation to the mise-en-scène and his long pans, is that her outfits often change color in different parts of the restaurant. So she'll be walking this way and have a red dress, and then when she gets into the loo, you see the wall, and it's white. In this latter scene here, where she torments her and the boy, you know, she starts out with like a white dress, it becomes green in the kitchen. And this kind of goes back and forth. Finally, he kind of keeps her in kind of more of a black, you know. Well, and then of course there's a long period where she wears no clothes. I'll get to that. Excuse me, it's not the company, definitely not the film. So he has noticed Michael. Albert has noticed Michael reading, and he makes fun of his books, and he, you know, him being an intellectual, he wants to know, are you Jewish? Michael's a Jewish name, and yeah, he hates everybody. He's just a scumbag. He has the most low conscious take on everything. You know, just a gutter take. But he really thinks he's really intellectual and learned, and because he's got all this money and power, he believes that he's like spitting out all this trivia about food and things and sexuality in grotesque ways. And his men kind of are like, yes, we're like, yeah. His men are all kind of doped up. Tim Roth plays his like one of his right hand men. It's one of Tim Roth's earliest roles. He's quite good in it. He's disaffected. You know, his eyes are blank, like he's always, you know, on strong drugs or liquor, or he's just an unfeeling sociopath, or probably the latter. But Albert does manage to alienate his crew one by one as the movie continues forward. So the big twist is when he has commissioned one of the attractive girlfriends of one of the more, relatively speaking, classy guys in his entourage. This is long black hair and black beard and black coat, and of course a red shirt. He looks kind of like Jared Leto and Morbius. And this guy's girlfriend, Albert, pushes in the direction of this gangster played by Ian Drury, who was, you know, a musician. He had Ian Drury and the Blockheads during the post-punk era, and, you know, in real life he has a hip or leg, whatever deformity, so he walks with this strange gait. And basically, you know, it's like, go to the alley and get this guy off, and you know, it's just so funny. I mean, without showing exactly what happened, but kind of the body language and then the aftermath. As I'm interpreting it, she tried to get him off with her hand, and he couldn't get an erection, and it caused him pain. And he's cussing her out. So Albert's not happy about that. So, you didn't get off my body. He doesn't say that. But, so this character, whose name I don't know, she has observed Michael and Georgina being spirited into one of the rooms by Richard. So she confronts Albert and her about this scenario with Drury, and she just basically says, you know, you always, you know, the boyfriend is like, don't treat her that way. And he's like, I'll treat women any way I want. And she's like, and that's your bloody problem. That's what you done to Georgie. And he's like, what about Georgie? And she's like, that's why she's always in the loo with that bookman. You're blind as a bat. And he stabs her in the face with a fork. He's a classy dude. It's horrible. And the boyfriend's like trying to get it out and gruesome. And then he goes on a rampage, trying to basically laying waste to the restaurant to find Georgina. Richard sneaks out Georgina and Michael, who were in the middle of a particularly passionate love scene, and they left their clothes in an adjacent little part of their storage bin. And there's no time to waste. They can hear Albert. He's like, Georgie, Georgie, Georgie. You know, he's losing his fucking mind, what little he has. And they sneak him. Richard sneaks them out in a truck filled with stuff that they were going to get rid of, which was like rancid meat. So they have this kind of humiliating drive. And then they get to an area, and Richard is helping them, and the little boy who sings is helping them. And it's basically where Michael works. He works in this bookstore. So he had joked at one time and said he was a gynecologist just to piss off Michael. But yeah, he's a book guy through and through. And so he closes the store and lives there. And Richard brings them gourmet food, and they're naked. I mean, eventually he gives them some shawls and jackets and, you know, stuff to put on. But they're not going to leave there until Albert tortures the little Pip-like character, I don't remember his name, I should know. Something like Pip or Puck or whatever, but he's, you know, he's like, we're going to feed you your buttons, and he feeds him the buttons on his shirt, and then he's like, we've run out of buttons, how about your belly button? And he stabs him here, and the kid's like unconscious, and they're slapping him. I thought he was dead at first, but he's not. Just very debilitated. And this is where, you know, they shouldn't have separated, but they did. Georgina goes to see Pip or whatever his name is in the hospital, leaving Michael alone, and they've tracked him down, and they began torturing him with the intention to murder him by stuffing books down his throat, making him eat his own library, and blood is coming up from his mouth, and blood is all over here, and where he spit up, and I don't know, it's probably his chest is starting to, fill, and it's really gross. Is he digesting these things? And they're pushing him down with like a blade, not a super sharp blade, but a sharp pointer poker. And finally, Spica, he turns on a dime with his emotions. I mean, from like, I'm angry, I'm going to kill everybody, to I'm the victim, it's all me fault, and he's always like on super, super intense, popping off in your face. And so he's like, just never mind, finish him, finish him. And that's the end of Michael. And Georgina finds his dead body, and she sleeps next to it, and you can tell she's kind of in shock. She's in this kind of fantasy thing. She knows he's dead, but she still likes, holding him, and that's kind of sad. And she says, I've got to tell you a story about how things were with Albert, because I must be done with this. And that is foreshadowing to Georgina's kind of empowerment. Like, this has gone on for years, and this is absolutely the terminal point, the final smashed, shattered, busted straw is Michael. And now it needs to be done with. And she's going to reclaim the power to make it so. And I love the fire you start to see in her character, informed by anguish and heartbreak, and obviously years of abuse and hypervigilance. And so she tells Michael, you can't hear, all about the times, as a close up sideways of her lying down, like she's lying down next to us, telling us all about the time she ran away from Albert, and they found her and they beat her, and they they beat her so bad they sterilized her. She was not able to have children, which Spica was complaining about earlier, like it was her fault. And so now we hear the truth of that. So then she goes to Richard and she's like, "I want you to cook, Michael." And he's like, "What?" He's like, "You're my chef. You know everything. You know how you know." And she's like, "Was I in love with Michael? Was it real love?" And she makes him describe their sex acts that uh, Richard happened to see and or hear, and he does in a very clinical, matter of fact way. I saw him put his hand on your breast. He's like reels them off, leaves it to her to decide was it love, and her thing is cook him, and he's like, you cannot do this. You cannot, because obviously people have tried to do this in the past and cannibals and stuff. You cannot consume him in order to have him in you forever and prove that it's love. And she's like, me? Not me. Albert's going to eat him. And then she's, here's 11 pounds, 11,000 pounds. And Richard's like, keep the money. I will do it. So by this time, Albert's like kicked out half of his crew. Of course, the chick with the fork in her face isn't too happy, and poor Roy and Pip. And so the restaurant's closed. Now, mind you, this takes place within 1 week, and each day is a new chapter, and it's a menu of what's going to be served that day. So this day, the restaurant is going to be closed, but Albert and what's left of his small entourage are invited to a very special event. And of course, he's like, what the hell's this about? I own this restaurant. What the hell? Because Richard had kicked him out permanently when his few thugs remaining. So he's like, why are you inviting me back? And then he's like, oh my God, Georgina. And he starts talking shit to her and, about the book guy. And he's just some nobody. And then he breaks down. He's like, it'll be all right, Georgie. You didn't really love him. I mean, he goes back and forth within seconds between this rage and insults of her to this, need for reassurance and that there's a chance and all this kind of stuff. Talking about a guy who's out of touch with reality, but he indeed, literally, he is a psychotic character. I do believe that is part of the point. And Richard's like, we brought some guests here, and the guests are like the usual suspects, Roy and who got smeared with the shit, and the little boy whose tummy got fucked up. He's in a wheelchair. The girl with a bandage on her forked up face, and her boyfriend, and another guy that he kicked out of his gang for merely suggesting that the cops could catch them for killing the book dealer. And of course the wait staff, everyone in the kitchen. It's a major entourage, beautifully staged tableau. Left widescreen at all the characters and all the colors of their outfits complement. And she's in the front and has this amazing outfit with these giant kind of feathers, black with this incredible outfit. It's kind of reminiscent in a weird way of Hela in Thor Ragnarok. That kind of fanciness, not to such a great scale and not with a mask, but it is that kind of, it'd be like a comic book character costume, a sci-fi character, fantasy character costume. Some really extreme fashion, and she looks cool as shit. And despite her bruises and such, she's got her hair up and she's very well spoken. And she's telling Albert this is the anniversary. He has no idea what you're talking about, Georgie. And they tell him, you know, we've made you a special meal, and they unveil it, and the music is still building, you know, da, na, 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 as it's been the whole way, and they pull the sheet off, and it is Michael. He's been cooked, nude, and you know, you see the pan of his body from his feet, and of course his penis, and all the way up, and you know, Albert's like flipping, you know, and Tim Roth, the last, you know, faithful thug, starts to try to attack them, and the wait staff just grabs him and tosses him away, and then this old lady who was one of his loyal followers, she like faints, starts to faint off camera, and they're kind of making fun of those two characters, Richard and Georgie, and so she's like, you know, this is your meal, and he's like, oh God, she's like, no, it's not God, it's my lover, Michael, and she said, you vowed you would kill him, and you did. You vowed you would eat him, and you will. Now eat him. And he grabs a gun, and they disarm him, and throw the gun to Richard. And then Richard gives the gun to the little boy in the wheelchair, and he's like, he hands it to Georgina. She holds the gun, you know, aims right at his forehead, and says, "Eat, eat, Albert. Start with the cock. It's a delicacy, and you know where it's been." And he can't quite do that. So he goes over to the stomach and he vomits. And then right as he's about to put the meat in his mouth, and he's shaking, and it's really incredible performance because he's tearing up. You know, Albert's finally like, "Oh fuck," you know, like karma, baby, and he's shaking really fast, and like, and then she's like, "Eat," and then he puts it in his mouth, and this is where it's cool because as we cut from that shot of him starting to eat, it cuts from, because we've been cutting back and forth between her and the entourage behind her and him, you know, behind the body. And so it shifts, and the camera move starts to go this way with his back to us and her across from him. And it's kind of sideways, and it starts to travel around, and it starts to open up on this side where you see all the people arrayed there who he's, you know, pissed off and fucked with, and she's kind of in the middle. And when that camera turn actually the camera turn starts here. They're across from each other, and then it turns to his back, and you see the people. And as soon as it cuts to that, the na 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 goes to wheel wheel wheel, these crazy horns, and it's really intense, and it's sustained all the way through the whole pan. And then she shoots him. It's just kind of and the curtains fall, which were appropriate, you know, because of the overly, you know, it's all Greenaway, man. So if you haven't seen the movie, I've given it all away. So sorry. It was an adventure for me, an emotional adventure, and an aesthetic adventure. And I highly recommend it. If you have not seen this, I would say put this in your top 10 films you need to see as soon as possible. And with that, I have spoken. Take care.